Look what you're doing. I don't wanna go home. Gonna be one night. Can you? I don't have a friend. All my life into. Yo, it's the seventh podcast. The seventh. Wow. I did not forget you guys. I did not. To be honest, it's just been a very busy couple of months for me. Sort of just realizing priorities with life and figuring how things go. But that aside, I am excited to say we are back on the podcast, seventh episode, and on this episode I talked to Hyena of 92 Dream Team, amazing guy by the way. Had an amazing conversation with him about a variety of topics, the challenges transferring from CL to Pro League, the most recent event they went to, the Allied Minor in Vegas, and facing against like T1 EU teams versus like Latin America teams. We have a conversation about Yardi at some point in the conversation, and it was honestly just a great time, and I hope you guys enjoy this. Just before I head into, I'm going to put the info of Hyena in the description, his Twitter if you guys want to follow him, and his Twitch. He said he wants to start streaming more, so definitely check him out. I stream almost weekly, and if you guys ever want to hang out and me on my Discord links are below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, all right, tell me about yourself, man.
Well, I'm Hyena, or Keon, and I'm, Rainbow Six player. I started, about a year ago. Like I would say, in the beginning of 2018 is when I started playing this game. Whenever Dokabian Vigil came out, is like around when I started playing the game. And I switched from CS:GO, so I wasn't like a competitive CS:GO player, but like I had like I think 2,000 hours on it, and I was I played ESEA. I was pretty into pugging. So when I switched over, I had the aim. I was just more about learning the game sense, getting game knowledge, and positioning everything. And you want me to go through like my story, like how I came to where I am today?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So I started playing ranked, just getting into it. Like I said, I was pretty mechanically skilled. I would say I definitely had an advantage over other new players just from playing first person shooter before on PC. And I would run, and I played West Coast a lot because I didn't know you could switch your server. Where now everyone knows like the good players play East, and I'm from California. And I ran into, my teammate now, Rexon. He, I used to play him all the time in ranked, and like we used to like shit talk each other or whatever. And then one day, like, he invited me and I played with him, and they were talking about how one of their players like had left or something. I don't remember exactly what happened. And, just randomly I was like, well, I have nothing better going on. I was living in a college dorm. I was pretty bored after my classes. I said, I'd like to play. And so they had me on because like we'd played. He knew I was good just from ranked, and ever since then I've been on a team with Rexon essentially for like my entire comp career. We took breaks. We each went to our separate teams for a few months, but like we both started our competitive careers together on this game. And that was Nitrox. So we competed at DreamHack Austin in the like Bring Your Own BYOC tournament. So it was like an open tournament where like as long as you like signed up, you could go. And we ended up, I think we won one map, and then we ended up losing to the DG team that went on to beat EG at that LAN with like Yaga, Hyper, and all them. And then we in the losers bracket, I think we lost to Crazy and ZZ. And it's funny because at that LAN, like I had, maybe 5 months playtime on the game. So I didn't even know any of these players. Like I didn't know like really any of the pros. I knew like Pengu and stuff, but like I didn't know that like who Crazy was, or I didn't know who like Hyper and them and Bolo were necessarily. And so I was just super inexperienced. But I mean, like we did pretty well, just even winning like a map against a team was, we saw that as a bonus. We didn't really expect to do anything special. And that team was, it was me, Nightcap, Rexon, Execration, and Yellow Fever. And then after that, that's when me and Richie went our separate ways for the first time. Like we were still friends, you know. I still considered him a friend, but he was at a lot better at me than me at that time because he had way more experience, and another better team, Goni, had just picked him up. Like they decided that they wanted him, so he went with them for CL quals, and I kind of just like, you know, jumped around from team to team, like playing in like ESA, playing Go Fours and stuff, just like kind of relaxing until Diablo and another ex-pro player, Temper, hit me up, and they like basically took me under their wing, and like taught me like the first real competitive siege, like where I actually learned like, you know, timings, how to trade, you know, proper droning, like the real first like true siege, I would say. And that we did that for a while. I was on that team for a long time. Like we made some roster changes, but the core was always just me, Temper, Trissa. And I think I must have been on it for 6 months when Yardi, you know, messaged me. And the whole time I was still friends with Richie. And he was like, well, let's start a team, like me, you, Rex, and we can make this like, you know, dream roster, you know, with Doodle and them. And I said, well, I'll give it a try because I didn't want to. Temper and Triss were my good friends at the time. They still are. And I didn't want to like, you know, leave it behind on a whim. I knew that these players were good, but it was a big decision for me. Like, so I wanted to give it a try first. So we tried it in a scrim. I think we scrimmed the Sinister roster at the time with like Nog in them, and we did really well against them. So I knew that like something special was there. And the reason I knew Yardi was good was because we'd played like I'd told the story before. We've played like in USN qualifiers. We'd play like good teams like DG, and I think the other team we played was like that Chapstick Sinister roster, the different Sinister, with like talent in them. And like those teams on paper were supposed to be way better than us, and we were like, you know, doing super well against them. So, you know, I knew that we had something special going on there. And that's basically how I got to today. We grinded for CL quals. We went on our infamous like 24-0 CL qual run. Had some trouble early on in CL after we qualified, but you know, we brought it back and made Pro League. And yeah, that's it. That's me.
But what roles do you play in competitive?
So for the longest time, when I first started, I essentially, it's funny. I went on the operators and I looked at what guns did the most damage, and like not thinking, and I would just play those ops. So I'm pretty sure I played like Jackal on attack and Jaeger just because I like the guns like felt so easy for me. And I didn't know the map. So what I used to do when I started the game is I would play Jackal, track feet, and just hunt that one guy, you know, because like I knew that I could like outgun him. I just didn't know the maps necessarily. So I did that for a long time. And then when Temper and them picked me up, they already had, you know, fraggers. So they wanted me on a more like anchor role. And that's when I started getting really good at like the Maestro Echo operators, like the anchor operators. And that's what I'm playing today. So I, you know, just months and months of playing those ops of like, I feel like I have a unique play style with them where I know how to be aggressive, but I know when to be passive with them. And but I would still like flex on attack for the most part. Up until recently, when we brought Thomas onto the team, I switched to hard breach. And you know, for the first couple weeks, I'd say it was hard because I just, you know, had to adjust my play style to be a hard breach. You know, see openings in the plant and not take fights, even when I want to when I would normally like take a fight, just because I have the bomb and I have utility that I need to use. So yeah, now I'm pretty much a support anchor player.
I was actually going to ask about that, like the transition from those roles, like if you could speak more on those challenges and things you had to learn and things you had to like relearn when becoming like an anchor player, or like, yeah, tell me about like those, like the challenges you had switching from like playing more flex entry roles to like Thermite.
So the challenges is like, so there's two things. First, it's like adjusting your play style to, you know, you obviously want to win. You know, no one wants to play for stats. You have to be. There has to be a player that plays like the hard breach to, you know, make the team win. But there's also the mental thing. You know, if you're not getting as many frags as some of the other players on your team, you know, with CGG and everything now, people are looking at these stats. It gets in your head that like, oh, people are going to think I'm not as good as them or something like that. So I think an important part of it is moving past that mental block. Recognizing that like as long as you're doing your job and you're doing it well, then your stats sheet in terms of frags doesn't necessarily matter. If you know that you did your job well and your team knows that you did it well, then it doesn't matter what other people say. When they see a scoreboard. And then in terms of just like adjusting play style, it's more about just being passive for me, I would say. I was more of a, when you're on flex and entry, you're kind of more aggressive. People are droning you and you take fights, you hold angles, you hold cutoffs and etc. Whereas on hard breach, until you get those walls open or until you get that bomb down or until you go for the execute at least, you kind of got to stay alive. It could mean like the difference between winning and losing a round if you get your hard breach player spawn peaked or if he goes to take a fight and he gets outgunned. So like even though I'm pretty confident that I can win a lot of these fights, I don't necessarily take them all the time anymore because I don't want to like even take that risk so that it puts my team in a bad position. And I think that's the most important thing. And along with seeing openings in the plant. Knowing when to stick the plant, knowing when to get off of it, being aware of your surroundings, where your teammates are, what angles they're holding, like so that the other team can't stop you from planting. It's a lot, I definitely gained a more respect for the role once I started playing it. It definitely is a lot harder than it seems from the outside. It's not, you don't just like run in and plant when your team tells you. Because there is, I would say, like, plant IQ. Getting off of it when you should be, sticking it when you should be, even positioning yourself while planning.
What about like Maestro and Echo? Like the balance of being more passive and aggressive on those roles. How is that?
Yes. So with Maestro and Echo, I mean, it's no secret. I love my Maestro. It's my favorite operator. And I also do agree with people that, that his gun is broken. 81 bullets, low recoil, good fire rate, good damage. It's when you would think of a normal anchor player or like a traditional anchor as being a passive player, just holding down the sight for his team. But because operators like Maestro and to some degree Echo are so strong, I feel like in certain scenarios there is it's more crucial to be aggressive on them, especially if you like say your team's struggling with the roam, or if you see an opening, or if you're just feeling confident that day. I for one will, I'll take a fight on defense, with if I'm running those ops or even Doc, depending on how the bands work out. And I think with that, it also just depends on how your team plays. Every team has a unique play style to them. If you're more of a passive team, more of an aggressive team, you can kind of pave the way for your team by getting a pick, because at the end of the day, you do have an ACOG, so it's like, it's a scope. Like you have, as long as you're hitting your headshots, you're on the same playing field as the attackers with their ACOGs. So I'd say it's more of a balance. You just got to know when to be aggressive, when to be passive.
Yeah, and speaking of just like the way team plays, I think 92 Dream Team is known for being like in a really aggressive team. Compared to the other teams you played for, joining that, how was that? Like, was it chaotic at first? Was it something you had to get used to?
So what I think happened is that we were all the aggressive players on our respective teams before we came to 92 Dream Team. So like the idea of the Dream Team is that we were all really good at our respective roles. So we were like, okay, well, if we put us together, everyone's like the best in the T3 scene at their respective roles. So it would be like a dream team of sorts. What's like the idea of it was. And like I was pretty aggressive when I was on, Temper's team, BDE. And, Richie's always been super aggressive on his teams with Goni and stuff. And, Yardy's Yardy. He's, those Obey qualifiers in the USN. And then, of course, there's Doodle. We all came together and we were just like, I wouldn't even call us super aggressive because I think there are more teams that are, even more aggressive than us. Like the Team 1 team that we recently lost to at the Vegas Minor. Like that was the first time we've played a team that was convincingly more aggressive than us. They were like... Yeah, they were hitting sight. They were doing shit like that. I felt I said it during the game. I was like, wow, this is what it must feel like to play us. Like, that's crazy to me. And so, yeah, I just felt like because all of us were, used to being more aggressive, taking more fights, it, made this idea of an aggressive team. It made us seem like, we peak a lot more than other teams and whatnot. When in reality, I feel like, we win most of them and it works. So, you can't really, I don't really see any room for criticism. There are some times where we overdo it and it does cost us rounds, but I feel like, coordinated aggression is definitely our strong suit on this team.
I think that's pretty sick. Like I watched the Team One game and I was like, I think it was the coastline map,
Yeah.
and I was watching that and I saw you guys like first like be aggressive on them. And at first Team One, like the first round, they played super like default, and then as soon as you guys played aggressive on them, they just switched up and pushed out every round. Anchoring on that, how did that feel? Like, did you feel like you couldn't do much about that or like contest that?
Yeah, so I mean that game we all made mistakes. I definitely made mistakes as an anchor that game. I should have adapted earlier once I saw how aggressive they were playing, and they really just capitalized on it. They were they would drone me out, stun me, and whatever, and then they just rush sight, and I'd be like full blind or whatever, and I couldn't do anything. But yeah, it caught us off guard definitely because we're used to being the how do I say this? The tempo setters. We're used to setting the tempo of the game, being aggressive, making the other teams play our pace, if that makes any sense. And it was weird when Team One did it to us because it's like it's making us play more cautious. And I kind of felt like a disconnect on stage. I was like, wow, like this is what it feels like, to be like another team being super hyper aggressive against you. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure they hit sight like 3 times. Literally, like they just rushed like 3 people through the same door.
Yeah, they did.
And I feel like we just the problem that game is just we didn't adjust early on enough, and then our attacks, were pretty mediocre that game, and that's what ended up costing us in the end. Because our first half it was 3-3. We went into the second half, tied up, and then I don't think we won a single attack.
How do you adjust to an aggressive team if a team's pushing site really quick? And I know this might be a weird question because that might be like people knowing how to play against your play style. But I think it's a huge weakness for like tier 3 competitive teams. Like when they play against aggressive teams, either in scrims or in an actual match, like it's really hard, I think, for people to counter that. So what is the counter to that?
I mean, I think it depends on the team, definitely. You don't want to. Like if a team rushes you one round, you don't want to like drastically change up your hold to like adapt for that rush because more than likely they're not going to do it like twice in a row, or they're not going to do it the exact same way, and they might be baiting you to like switch it up. So it's knowing when to change, like whether it's like an operator selection. Obviously, like if Lesion's up, you want to take a Lesion to stop a rush, or things like that. Or if they're opening a wall with no like contest. No one's contesting it, then you want to take ops like Cade or Mute, to stop them from getting the wall open so fast. Or even, in some cases you can fight aggression with aggression to slow them down. Go for a spawn peak to make them, set the pace, make them know like, hey, like we're here, we're waiting for you to do it. It does like things like that do take confidence away from the other team. And once they start second guessing themselves is when, typically you're going to start winning rounds.
Let's talk about the 24-0 like streak, the CO quals. Like, was that just teams like your caliber of a team being completely different from like other teams, or was it just like were they just making so many mistakes? Or was it actually just a freebie? Like, what exactly was like that 24-0 run? Because that was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, so let's get into that. I don't think I've ever talked about this too, so it's good. The 24-0 run was a lot of things. So it was, don't get me wrong, like a lot, there was a luck factor involved. There were plenty of games that we were down by a lot of rounds that we came back and, it was like by the skin on our teeth we won. Like I'm pretty sure we beat Tunes like 8-7 when we were down like 6-4. We came back from 1-6 against OC one game. As far as the rest of it, it was more once we came together, we had like a couple days before quals. All of us are like very good individual players. We're all playmakers. We're all like, known for making the plays that are round winning plays. And I think when you put that together with like, you have 5 of those players on a team, against qual teams that are like, they're structured or they try to be structured, but they're not like, confident, I would say. You start to rip them apart because, and and if the first 30 seconds, two of your teammates are dead, you start to lose confidence, and then our team is gaining confidence, so we're just peaking, winning every fight, and then it's like a cycle. We're getting more confident, they're getting less confident, and I feel like for most of the teams, that's what happened. And then against the, some of the better teams like OC and Quals or Toon Squad, we were getting we were just playing, our game, and they were playing their game, and it was neck and neck, and then we did something to adapt, or they did something to, they tried something else, and we just ended up with the win. So there was luck involved. I remember in the beginning, we like set a list. We're like, okay, so there's 5 CL spots. We think these teams, us, and then these other teams are going to make it. And we're like, because we're all really realistic. We're like logical. We're like, okay, we think that Billboard's team, Least Wanted, is probably better than us. We think that Toon Squad is probably more coordinated than us right now. And then we kind of placed ourselves in that third spot. We're like, okay, we're probably the third best team heading into quals. And then once we started beating those teams that we thought were better than us, that's when like we started to get a confidence boost. And then like I said, it just adds more and more to it. When we were beating teams like E-Gang and Invite Quals, it definitely made us feel a lot better, and more confident in the way we played.
Let's talk about that game against Toon Squad, and you said that you guys were down like 6-4. Because you've already won so many games coming into that, was your mentality like you guys probably still can't win this? Like, were you on like a rush high of like, we're probably still gonna win, or were you just playing it like round by round? Like, was there any moment in that game where you thought, oh, we might actually like lose this?
No. So when I play, and I think I can speak for my teammates as well when I say this, is I take it round by round. The scoreboard does not affect how I play, and I don't think it should affect how anyone plays. Whether you're down 6-1 or up 6-1, you need to keep like a calm, like level mentality. Like otherwise, you start to make mistakes that you don't think. Like if you're overconfident, if you're up 6-1, you may be like you're not as careful, and that's how they catch you off guard, and they'll start coming back. Or if you're down, you start getting in your own head, you start being depressed, then there's no chance to come back. So I definitely take it round by round, and I definitely play a role in keeping my teammates level-headed, telling them like, look, relax, like don't look at it like a game, just look at it like this, play like we're playing it's a scrim, relax, let's think about what we have to do and let's do it. And then focus round by round, you're coming back. And then, you're obviously, as we're coming back, you're getting more and more confident, like I said earlier. And, if you pull it off, you pull it off. But I don't think that the key, in my opinion, to winning is not letting your emotions affect your play. You have to, just keep your head working, keep thinking about what you need to do to win, and not let your emotions get to you.
What about the Allied Esports minor? Like, you guys probably got to play a good amount of teams there, even though you guys didn't make it super far in the tournament. That was probably really a great LAN experience against international versus like pro league teams or whatever. How was that? Like, how were the games you guys played, or things you learned from playing against different types of teams?
So yeah, we went into the minor, not really expecting much. We didn't want to, give away too much for pro league coming up here in a few days. And it was more just, getting LAN experience as a team because, we've very limited LAN experience as a team, if any. And we showed up, we played our game. And I think, we did well. We won 2 maps and we lost 3. And the way it works is that if you won 3, you're out, or you go up, and if you lose 3, you're out. So international teams, we didn't do like too much prep work. And I think going forward, that's something that we definitely have to work on. Our coach was sick. Virus had bronchitis, so he couldn't do as much as he would normally do. And, we don't blame him for that. So we kind of took some of it on our own. And so, yeah, playing Penta for the first time was, eye-opening. I mean, we won the first round and we were pretty hyped, but then they came in 7-1 us. They were prepared. They knew, exactly how we took. They knew, even like they had it down to where the spots we stood in, when we were doing a certain execute. They had holes in the floor ready to C4 us and stuff. And they played their game very well. And that was the first time I'd ever played a European team. And if it's anything to judge off of, it's, they're definitely, on a tier above NA, I feel like right now. With the way they practice and the way they like look at the game and their professionalism. And that's definitely something I want to achieve with my team, when we can all, basically just practice in the same way. and then it was a contrast. So we played Penta. Ironically, the two teams we beat were North American teams because we knew how they played. We're used to it. We've played Rise, we've played Sonics, and we beat them both. It wasn't convincingly. Both maps won OT, but I feel like it was more for our mistakes, not because the other team was playing. Like they were playing the rounds better than us. We were just making a lot of mistakes. I think due to nerves, due to being at our first LAN. I definitely noticed that in some of my teammates. But so every North American team we played, we beat, and then we played Liquid, and they were aggressive like Team One, but they weren't. It was more coordinated aggression. It was like us, but like more practiced and coordinated. And we played them. We went up 3-1, in the beginning, and we were, our spirits were pretty high. Like we were like, wow, like we might beat, a LATAM team that's like top of their region. And they called a timeout, and after I got a 1v3, they called a timeout, and then they 7-3'd us or something. And then after that, yeah, we went on stage and played Team One. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience. It was fun to play international teams. I definitely know, I would be more prepared next time, going into future LANs and Pro League. And also it's just, LANs are just fun just to meet people, get out and talk to people in the community, put a face to the people you hear behind the screen.
Yeah, for sure. That Penta game, let me know more about that, just how it feels to just be super counter stratted. Have you ever faced that before? Did you face that level of people who read into your plays in the CL season? Was that the first time you encountered people having holes below where you would execute? And how would you how did you in the moment think to play against that?
So for the first question, yes, we have played against people trying to counter strat us before. Sonics is a good example of that. Super loves his counter stratting. He's and when we play them, we notice that they're counter stratting us because we know they're not doing the same thing that they did in their VODs. They're not they're playing a different way for us. And usually we're pretty good against that because we recognize it and then we adapt for it. But I feel like the problem with the Penta game is that they had the counter strats, but they also had a lot more mechanical skill to back it, as well as confidence. They're an experienced LAN team. They're not it doesn't phase them to be playing at LAN, in a different environment. Whereas that was our Penta game was essentially our first game at LAN ever. So I definitely noticed that my teammates weren't playing the same way that they would normally be at home. A lot of them weren't being as aggressive as I would expect them to be in an online match. And I don't blame them for that. There's always going to be that initial period where you got to shake out the LAN nervousness or whatever. And I experienced that to some degree. But that's obviously not why the entire reason why we lost, but I think it was a huge factor is that we didn't necessarily adapt how we should have. Once we saw that they were counter-stratting us, we kind of just got super cautious and just held angles, which isn't going to work against an experienced pro team who's been to multiple LANs.
Yeah, tell me about the mediocre performance you guys had during the first half of the CL season, and what was going on with that phase. Because I know at some point you guys picked up Prod, I think, and you guys
No,
were
it was bombs.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, bombs. And you guys are trying to figure out, excuse me, what to do with that, and the roster change, and eventually Thomas comes into the picture. But let me know what was going on there, team wise.
Yeah, so the first half of the PL season or CL season, what ended up happening is we were just making mistakes. We weren't putting in the level of work that other teams were putting in, and I feel like that's going to be a factor going forward as well. Is that me and Yardi are in college. We can only have so much time we could have dedicated to this. Doodle has a full-time job, and then for the first half, Richie had a full-time job. So we can only get maximum. We were scrimming 3 maps a night. And Bombs had a full time job too. I forgot when he was on the team, and I recognized pretty early on we were a best of 3 team. We're good at adapting and coming back, and the best of 1 format didn't benefit us, especially with the ties. So these teams, they're preparing for the best of 1. They would know what map it was going to be, and they were kind of outplaying us. It was not necessarily. I didn't feel like any of them were necessarily better individual players. Most of the time, it was just that they were outplaying us as a team. And we tried some role changes. We tried whatever. We got we did get some wins in. We beat Elevate. We beat Who else did we beat? We beat like Silla's and Arbad. But like no, I'm pretty sure the first half we didn't get like a win against the top team in that season. And we were getting pretty down in the dumps going into the second split. Like we were like we don't know what to do. Like we're trying different stuff. Our translating what we do in scrims wasn't necessarily working to games. And then Thomas came into the picture. Do you want me to go into that or?
Yeah, you can go into that. I'd love to hear about like picking up Thomas and what he changed.
Yeah, so I've said it before. I've always thought Thomas was a great player. He got removed from EXG for whatever reason, and to this day I don't think he should have been. I know obviously I don't know the internal issues, so I can't really comment. What goes on behind the scenes, but I knew just from a player standpoint that he was a good player, and that he would be what we needed because we were struggling for a while with bombs. So we talked about it and we decided like, okay, well, EXG is going to let Thomas out of his contract. We should pick him up. And we did, and we made some role changes. And then from there on out, I think other than a tie or two, and, obviously losing one map to Sonics, I don't think we dropped a map, after picking up Thomas. And we just, grinded the way to PL. Thomas brought a lot of experience. He being in Pro League for, essentially the whole season. I think he missed like 2 play days. He like knew how a PL team should operate. He knew how comms should be. He knew like how trades and droning should work. And that I felt like elevated us to the next level because our individual skill has always been there. We're all very mechanically skilled in my opinion. It was just about, putting it together and being more coordinated.
On a personal level, I'm pretty curious as to like what were the individual things you had to grow in to become Pro League or CL caliber? Like, what were things that you faced, like challenge-wise, that you felt like you had to eventually become because obviously as a team, you guys had to like grow together to become a Pro League team. Congrats on making Pro League, by the way. Realize I haven't said it. But on a personal level, what did you think you had to like become a lot better in to be able to like face Pro League teams consistently and perform? At least in the scrim environment.
For me, it's always been about game knowledge. Like I said, like I felt like I was pretty mechanically skilled switching over from CS:GO, and for me personally, it was always about just getting time in the game. Say like I wanted to scrum more than my teammates because when we switched me to hard breach, because I wanted to get good at that role, and I wanted to get practice, seeing openings for the plant, and get practice using my utility and things like that. I'm pretty sure that I'm like the least experienced player in Pro League right now. I've only been playing for like a year and a half, and a lot of these pros have been playing like since day one or like since very early on. So for me, it's always been about catching up, and that's how I view the game. When I'm scrimming, I'm always the one. I'm always wanting to scrim more than my teammates. I'm always wanting to play more ranked. Just look at more VODs, watch more VODs, catch up. Sink my time in the games, like build towards that mastery, and get just having more hours on the game. And then in terms of like just very like specific styles, I felt like I sometimes was too passive. And that's funny to say being on this team, but there are times where like I'm not using my mechanical skill to my advantage because I'm playing too passive. Whereas I felt like halfway through CL, like I could get a little more aggressive, without sacrificing or dying early or whatnot, and not playing so scared on a game day. I think that's what my problem was, and I'm still working on it. Obviously, even the pros like that have been playing this game since day one, they still have things to improve on. It's just about getting better each and every time you get on to practice, and each and every everything's a lesson in my opinion. Every scrim, every match, sometimes even in ranked.
It's super challenging balancing school while competing.
For me, it is. Yeah, I'm on summer break now. And I don't know what's going to be happening in the fall, whether I'm going to take a lighter course load or maybe take some online classes. But yeah, for the CL season, especially going into our Pro League match against Sonics, and even our playoff match against OC, I had finals that entire week, and it was just like super stressful. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. just super stressed out because I knew how important this was and like how, this could change my future if I made pro league. So like I didn't know if I should, sacrifice studying for this or, whatnot. So it is definitely hard to balance. And I think it also depends on, everyone's situations. Like I know Bosco is able to compete in pro league and do, college full time and like upperclassman college at that. Uh, it just depends on your work ethic and like you as a person. If you can, some people, if they try and balance two things, both things end up suffering, and they're not as good as if they were to focus entirely on one thing. And some people, it's no problem at all to balance to things like school and professional esports gaming. But for me personally, yeah, it's been tough. But I mean, like I've worked past it, and I do make my own compromises, and just to be able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I definitely respect that. Like on a personal level, like I don't think I'm even tier 2 level competition, but just like I also go to college, and just balancing that with like competitive is definitely hard. I definitely saw when I took a break from competitive, like I got A's for the first time, which
Mm-hmm.
blew my mind. I was like, holy shit, I can get A's. And then I had to think about the decision of like, hey, do I wanna keep getting straight A's, or do I wanna actually try to pursue competitive? Because it's really hard to give like your 100% to both. It's almost impossible, I think, if you want to
Yeah.
make it to the top level. Um, I guess I could ask a question now though. Like, so what? Like, if you could, you don't have to go too much into detail about it, but like the whole Yardy thing, like what was the reason for the change if it wasn't super internal? And do you
Yeah.
guys already
So
have a pickup? You don't have to say who it is.
a lot of stuff's still in the air. The reason why I don't get that's pretty much why I don't want to get too in depth with it is because a lot of the stuff is still in the air. This happened basically like 2 or 3 days ago. Um, what basically happened is that there was a miscommunication within the team, where some things were told to other people at the LAN, and these things got out, and whether they got misconstrued or whether they were interpreted in the wrong way, Yardi viewed it as a threat, and he essentially thought that he was being dropped, so he left it. He essentially left. Yardi left the team. Um, I don't want to go too much further than that, but as far as our fifth, we have narrowed it down to a few people. I don't want to say who, but we should know, within the next day or two who it's going to be.
I think the rumor around everyone is just like you guys have to drop Yardi because if you guys want to get an org, you can't keep him because of his past. I don't know how true that is. If that's the case or not. I don't know if you. Yeah, you don't have to go too deep into that.
It definitely played a factor. That definitely played a factor in considering if we were going to do something like that. But like I said, it was all just miscommunication. And what we were doing is we were essentially like going over scenarios and what ifs. But there were many things. It wasn't just oh you already had a controversial past, so you have to drop him to get an org.
Okay, that's completely understandable
Yeah.
then. Damn. Okay, let's I want to reflect on at least this new season coming up. How like what are you looking forward to? Any matchups against any particular teams? Yeah, in this like new pro league season. And also, I have a second question to that, which is how can you become not the average CL team that switches over and has like the worst season ever and just barely tries to stay in the league? How can your team not be just another CL team that struggles, that makes it into pro league but isn't pro league caliber?
Yeah. So I am excited about this season. First off, and I'm excited to play a lot of the players that have like switched over from CL with us. That like we kind of like came from the bottom together, like Merc and Fultz, who are now on pro teams. And then going into the second question of how we can move past being like the typical CL team that plays and gets like seventh or whatnot and has to like fight for not be relegated. I think it's just going to depend on our work ethic and how it comes down to our practice. Because in my opinion, we have the individual skill to compete at the top level. It's our practice, scheduling and our practice, our work put in is that's not at the same level. And I feel like that's more of like a systemic problem with Siege itself is that we're not given the same opportunities that as a lot of these teams. Like Dark Zero, EG, they all have, you know, tons of backing. All these teams, essentially every team except us, has, you know, backings, team houses, analysts, you know, people that are like essentially giving to these players every needs, boot camps, you know, giving them the perfect, you know, environments to practice and get better at the game. Whereas right now, at least, we don't have access to those resources. We don't have access to a salary until we're signed. Um, so meaning like, you know, a lot of my teammates can't quit their jobs yet, meaning we can't practice as much as a lot of these other pro league teams. And I feel like if anything, what will do us in will be our lack of practice. But regardless, you know, I'm still confident in my team. I think, you know, we're all superbly talented and, you know, really hardworking despite all the challenges we have to face, and, you know, despite not having the same opportunities as on like essentially every other pro league team there is. You know, a lot of people doubted us when we barely made, you know, playoffs in CL, and we just, you know, we just kept fighting. We fought and fought, and like we know what to do. We know what it takes. And I just pray that, you know, within, you know, pretty soon here, we are able to get, you know, the same opportunities. We are able to get the same support systems as these other, you know, pro players.
I definitely hope so too. Let's talk about the efficient practice, at least, because you seem to, at least you said a couple minutes ago how you try to go into every practice and get better. Let's talk about how to efficiently practice in scrims or scrim ethics. Like you, if you're scrimming your team, how do you make this practice worthwhile? Especially if it's not against like the best team. Also, how do you still not lay your guard down and just like scrim, you know, whatever, just to win and get the maps over with, or at
Yeah.
least the
Well,
bad ethics that NA is known for in the scrim environment.
Well, first off, there's always going to be bad scrim days. You know, every team, you know, there's going to be days where players, like, you know, whether it's one player, two players, or however many, show up and they're in bad moods, and, you know, they don't necessarily want to play. And I feel like the best things for days like that is to just call it early, because like at that point, you know, that's not what the mentality and the, you know, the vibe is going to be on game day. So there's no point to practice like that. You know, obviously, if it's happening, you know, day after day, then it's a problem. You need to sit that player down and tell them, like, look, you know, that you're making our practice suffer by acting like this in scrims. But if it's just like, you know, one-off day thing, then I think it's okay to call scrims early. You know, and we've done that in the past. And pro teams have done that against us, and there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion. As far as scrimming like lesser teams and what to do, you know, if you know you're trying to practice one thing and it's not, and it's just super easy. I feel like, is that what you're getting at? Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
yeah, so I feel like in situations like that, if you're accepting a scrim against a lesser team, at least from like the T1, T2 level, it's more so to work on like a specific thing, like a very targeted aspect of your guys' game, to be scrimming a team like that. You know, whereas you want to practice like a certain way to attack or a certain way to defend a couple sites. Or like a new strategy, because obviously you don't, if you've never tested a strategy, or if you've never tested this new you know, it could even be like like game philosophy in mid game. Like say you want to try someone else IGLing, you obviously want to try it against a good team, but first it might be worth it to try it against a lesser team to just feel it out and decide if it's worth going to you know, taking it to the next level and trying it against like a pro team scrum or something. So I feel like that's where, you know, a T1 team scrimming a T3 team, or even like, you know, lower, would be ideal. And then it also just depends from team to team. Like I know some NA coaches have, you know, when I was a T3 player in the past, NA coaches would tell me to tell my team, like, yo, we're playing this team next week, and they're super aggressive. Can you guys match that play style? Can you guys play super aggressive today in scrims? You know? And it's like, a lot of the times when a pro team is scrimming like a T3 team that like doesn't get to scrim pro teams a lot, they're more likely to like go with something like that because they're just excited to be scrimming a pro team. So I feel like that can also, you know, in situations like that, it could help.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've definitely been in those environments too, where like pros are prepping for like a game and they just want you to play a certain site that the other team plays a lot. I think even in the T3 scene, like people don't do that enough. Like people, I mean, there's not a lot to practice for if it's not CL, but I think people
Yeah.
don't coordinate their scrims enough or like just let people know, hey, we're trying to like if you guys don't mind, we're trying to actually play like I have this idea that people could just like scrim and be like, we're actually trying to play like see how we can play to win this. Like we're not really trying to practice anything. If you guys are okay with that, like we just want to actually try to put our best into this and see like what the outcome come. If you guys are down for that, so two people, so the both teams scrimming each other have the same mindsets going into it,
Yeah.
or
Because there's obviously times where you want to test your team, be like, you'll sit your team down and be like, yo, tonight I want everyone to go all out. Like, I want to see how we hold up against a team like this, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. Obviously you don't want to like, do dumb runouts and stuff and just like ruin the practice. But, going hard in scrims and like playing it to win, I don't think is necessarily wrong if you think it'll benefit your team.
yeah, 100%. So what games do you play on the side when you're not playing Siege?
Right now, nothing much. Like I said, I used to be into CS:GO. I play a lot of like single player games, in the past, like Witcher, Fallout, things like that. But right now, like I've just mainly been grinding Siege for the PL season. Nothing really.
And Pro League starts in like 4 days, I believe. On Monday?
Yeah. PL starts on Monday.
Is the
for our
schedule
first
announced yet?
I do believe it's announced, but I don't know if I can say
it's
who
official.
we're playing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Either way, that's gonna be super exciting. Get to see you guys play on a Monday. I'm
Yeah.
trying to see if I have any other questions in mind. I think like in hindsight, going back, what would you improve, or if you're gonna like talk to anyone who was currently like building a CL team towards CL quals, what would you give as advice for people about the grind quals and potentially like the CL season?
I would say first off, definitely know how to balance your life. Don't dedicate your entire life to Siege because, in my opinion, like you will play your best when everything in outside of Siege, is in balance. Like if your work's in check, if your relationships are in check, everything's going well outside of the game. That's when you'll play your best because you have like a healthy mind, healthy body. You're thinking clearly. You're making good decisions in game. So that's the first thing. Definitely don't like drop everything just for Siege. You can make that decision once you're close to the top. Then that's when you can cross that bridge. But you definitely do not need to dedicate like 10 hours plus a day to this game to make CL. I think that's a big misconception that people have that are trying to make CL is they think that just throwing stupid amounts of time at the game will make them better. And then secondly, people might not agree with me on this, but I think that you also have to some degree, look at this game as a business. Your friends are your friends. And obviously, when you get started, everyone wants to make a team with their friends. But there will come a point where you or someone else is going to have to make a decision that, might not be beneficial towards your friendship. You might have to drop a friend or a friend might have to drop you. And you have to decide if, you're going to let that affect your friendship. Like I said earlier, I've left a team of good friends that I'd known for months to join another team because I felt that team was better. And it was a hard decision, but like sometimes those decisions have to be made. And I think any pro league player will tell you that like this is a business at the end of the day, and that doesn't mean it has to be cutthroat or you have to be shady. You have to like, be out to get everyone, like only look out for yourself. But you definitely have to know when like you're letting your bias for someone like close to you interfere with how far you personally or the rest of your team can go. So if you're trying to make CL and you have a player that's consistently underperforming and you've tried switching roles and you've tried like talking to him about what he can do and nothing's working, even if that player is your good friend, I would say consider trying someone else. If you've exhausted every option. It is sometimes one player change is all you need to like take yourself to the next level. But obviously that's you want to first exhaust other options. You don't want to like when this guy has a bad day or two get rid of him. There are steps involved, and then beyond that, just practice. Watching how teams play, pick your favorite pro league team, see how they attack, see their setups, see what they're good at, and try and just use that as a template for your, how you want your team to play. Do go over it in dry runs, and then you can even add your own like style and flavor to it, depending on like how your own team plays. And then the rest is just time. Time, experience, getting in that game day experience. Like I said, there's always going to be that little game day factor where you don't play it as you do in scrims because there's more on the line.
Yeah, I've said it countless times on my podcast. I think it's even just a proven fact in either real sports or esports. When it's game day, you probably drop like 20% at least in performance. And you have to sort of just like accept that, not deny it, and like factor that in your play. And just play with it and just push through it at the same time. And not like let it mentally like bring you down because you're not playing the way you usually do play. Um yeah, this was freaking amazing, bro. Thank you. You articulate well, which is freaking amazing to hear. Thank you for doing this podcast with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
I hope you guys have an amazing season. I hope you guys get signed to an org also. Everyone's
Thank
looking
you.
forward to the new fifth announcement. I actually don't know when this podcast will be released, so maybe it'll be released before or after, whatever the case may be. But like, yeah, we're looking forward to you guys actually dominating. You guys are like a symbol of what T3 people dream of. And it seems so far away sometimes, but when you guys actually made it, it was like, holy shit, this is so possible. So yeah, like 100%, like we're rooting for you guys out there.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you do, man. I've watched a lot of the podcasts you've done, and I look forward to this one.
Oh, a fan. Let's go. Yeah, this is great. Oh, we met in invitationals, I think.
I think we might have. Yeah, I think we might have. I met a lot of
You
people.
with Temper. Or were you Bolo? I can't remember.